Welcome to OCL Soundwaves. Meet the artist. You're about to encounter two people of accomplishment who share similar inspirations and whose visual expressions underscore their individuality. Mary Walker-Baptiste and Suzi Hoffman find the exotic in the commonplace in all parts of the globe. Their individuality will be on display in a joint exhibit entitled European Canvas throughout November and December at the Ocean County Library Toms River Branch in the McConnell Gallery. Our award-winning guests have deep and ongoing ties to the venerable Pine Shores Art Association in Manahawkin. Mary devoted 11 years to directing the Pine Shores children's classes, extending her life's work as an elementary school teacher, and continues to teach adults. Art enthusiasts in 24 states and 5 nations have her images in their collections. Her work is on permanent display in the Village Hall of Ridgewood in Bergen County. She favors oils, alcohol inks, collage, poured watercolor, and watercolor crystals. Suzi holds a seat on the Pine Shores Board of Directors, curates the Beach Haven Borough Hall Gallery, directed Kentucky's Paducah Art Guild and Gallery, and belongs to the Garden State Watercolor Society. Her graphic art and written works have been commissioned by theaters, charities, ad agencies, and news publications. She opened a studio after a career as a marketing manager for Smithsonian's National Zoological Park in Washington, D.C. Suzi's watercolors, mixed media, and acrylics are in private and corporate collections nationwide. And of course, their work is amply displayed in galleries and juried shows throughout the Jersey Shore region. European Canvas has a singular honor still ahead of it in 2022 in Atlantic Highlands.
We juried into their display opportunities and particularly for their front windows. And so our show will hang in their front windows, hopefully for all the folks getting off the ferry from Manhattan. and it will be there from mid-May through June and 22.
That window position is a very, very much coveted position, I understand.
Well, it's certainly visible, and that lovely gallery is on the main drag there, so I think will be noticed. It's a lovely town, and we're very glad to have the opportunity to be there.
And the windows, I think, are, as Suzi said, they're visible to everybody walking up and down the street, and we're going to display things on both sides because it's a two-sided display area. And then you would go into the building to see the other artists that are on display there. But we're just doing the windows, but we're quite excited about the windows.
Tell us, let's roll back a little bit in the years here. Go back to when you started. Who are the mentors that you look to? Because you've mentored a lot of people. Who guided you into this area of expertise?
My parents were both artists, so I could start there. Obviously, growing up as a child, whenever I could get brand new crayons for whatever holiday event there was going on, was the most exciting thing for me. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Iowa, and I went to college in Kansas, and I minored in art. So my art teachers in college were certainly influential in my careers. And then when I retired from teaching, I had a friend, but also an artist, Ann Winter, who's up in Ridgewood. I was in her classes, and then when I moved down here and found Pine Shores, it was my art home. And Tom Rutledge probably was my first, most influential artist that I had here, and he's he is our premier artist in residence, if you will, at Pine Shores.
How about you, Suzi?
I come from a family of artistic people also. My mother was a sculptor. My dad was an electrical engineer, but in a very artistic way. He designed a lot of the like the Smithsonian lighting outside at night, and the first Washington Monument outside lighting at night. So some of the iconic images of D.C. where I grew up that you see on postcards were from my father's talents. My brother is professional photographer, and I married a guy in theater, so I've sort of spent my whole life in the arts. I worked primarily as a writer before retiring, as a writer and graphic artist, but mostly as a writer, which I continue to do, and a commercial writer, not a fiction writer, and I've always been interested in art and drawing, and from since being a small child, but I had a couple of wonderful high school art teachers, and also some fabulous college art teachers, and then also there's a guy named Walt Bartman in Maryland who is a terrific teacher who runs classes at something called the Yellow Barn Studio and at Tillman Island, and he takes classes around the world. I have unfortunately not been able to do that with him, but he was also an influence for me.
Multi-tool player. You call it commercial writing, but it still is an art. There's a great deal of creativity in that.
I think all artists are sort of multi-dimensional when it comes to creating things, don't you?
I do, and music is another one of the arts, and I was involved with music all the way through high school. Sort of let it go after that, but I think all of those things, as you said, they're just and I always chuckle with, there's sort of like an occupational hazard for artists, and that's that we see things. I mean, we really see things that other people don't see, which is a gift. It's a true gift.
Well, it's a gift, but you're also taught to see.
Yes, yeah.
But
I think
we don't see things a lot of people see things in sort of in a flat plane. Artists see things that are always rounded and multidimensional.
Exactly, but even just things in nature. I could be out with my friends playing golf, and I'm looking at the clouds, and they're checking to see where their ball went, because I see the clouds.
Yeah.
It's fortunate. I look at it as a gift.
And that really speaks to a quote that you've been associated with, which is, you've been able to view your surroundings with an artist's eye.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at the clouds and everyone else is looking for the ball, what exactly are you seeing? Because I know if I'm looking at it, I'm not seeing the same thing.
As Suzi said, I think if I were to mention to someone the fact that the bottom of the clouds are darker, the top of the clouds are lighter, because I've learned that the sunlight comes from the top, so if you're painting them, you're going to do lighter at the top, darker at the bottom, because that's underneath. But if I were to tell someone that, I think that they would get it as well. But it's something, as Suzi said, you have to be, taught to do the looking as well.
I think, you brought up music. My son's a musician and a professional musician, and also a filmmaker, and does podcasts and things. He has a media company. I think music is, it's sort of part of all of us too. I always work with music, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, but for the thing about seeing things differently, one of the first things your college professor will take you out to do as a student is to do tree rubbings and things like that, to feel the textures, and then life classes, drawing people in charcoal gets, you see how everything has shadows and curves, and when you start to draw people, you don't start with lines, you start with swirls like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you sort of, you see, when you look at, say, the window, you don't see something flat, you see there's a shadow over there, and how it, you just notice all those things.
And thinking of being taught to do those things and to look, one of my college requirements, one of the classes I took in drawing, everybody was given about a 3x5, 4x7 pad of 100 sheets of paper. And the responsibility for us as homework at that time was to draw every single day. And I still have my little pad of paper, and I showed that to some of my young students, and they don't know what some of these objects are, obviously, because they don't have those objects anymore. but it was something where you had to train your eye to really look.
You know, that makes me think, when I moved from here to Paducah, Kentucky for a while after Sandy. And when I was there, I signed up for some classes at the Paducah School of Art and Design. Paducah is a beautiful little town on the Ohio River that's an artist colony. And I went to the college to sign up, and I signed up for drawing too. And they said, they looked through their computer and they said, well, you didn't, have drawing one. And I said, well, I had it years ago. Not here, they said. So I signed, and it was a good thing. I needed that drawing one. I wanted to, get my chops back up into drawing. And at the first class, there were like 12 or 15 of us or something. And about half of us were adults that were taking this class and going, yeah, and there, some of the young people, freshmen, had signed up thinking this was going to be an easy class.
Right.
Oh my God, we had tons of homework, tons of homework.
Like 100 sheets of paper.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great though.
Mm-hmm.
Suzi Hoffman, there was something that you said that inspired me too. You said being an artist is who you are. That's pretty profound for a short statement. So is it really more like a calling as opposed to a...
It's, you can retire from being an accountant or something, or a banker or a stockbroker, but you don't ever retire from being an artist. That's who you are all your life. It's just in you.
But I also think some artists are hesitant or shy to put that label on themselves. And it took me a while before I would just say, I'm an artist. And when people would refer to it as my hobby, I was like, ooh, don't do that. Don't do that. That makes my back.
Everybody says,
bristle.
Is that a hobby?
Right. Nice hobby that you have. No, it's not a
I'm
hobby.
a professional artist, yeah.
How do you know when you've crossed that line?
When you start selling
I was just going to say, absolutely.
When someone wants to buy your work.
Mhm.
Right. And you're in shows and you win ribbons and all of that.
Mhm. Do you look back at your early renderings and see a different person who was doing those as opposed to who you are now?
Well, in all of life, hopefully, we continue to learn, we continue to grow, we continue to do and get better. And the more art is like anything else, the more you do it, the better you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly what I'm doing now is a far cry from what I started off doing, although I started off as a graphic artist, which is take away, eliminate, get down to the bare minimum of just a few lines, just to capture the thing with a proper composition and color flow, and less is more. And now I'm piling paint on. That was a hard transition,
And I'm thinking of these new medium that I'm getting involved in when I do alcohol inks, when I do watercolor crystals. And I look at what I did, and I've been in these for maybe 6-7 years, a little more maybe. But I look back at what I did initially as a new medium, and then I look at what I'm doing now with that new medium, and I'm doing so much more exciting things than what I did initially. So those things that were never framed, they're just in a drawer, those get cut up and made into greeting cards because they're so nice.
Right.
And I don't want to throw them away, but I'm not going to sell them or show them.
Winslow Homer used to do that, He used to take a big canvas if he needed money and cut it up and sell little pieces of it.
Right.
You're both well versed in multiple media, and you've traveled extensively. After you've collected impressions and images in a region, how do you narrow it down and determine what exactly you're going to commit to a project? What you're going to work on out of everything you collect?
Well, sometimes you get a commission, and so that's what you're asked to do. But I think it's just what inspires you at the moment? What is it that you love today? You know?
Yeah, when I've been fortunate to travel to Europe, I always take a sketchbook with me, and I'll find myself sometimes on a river cruise or whatever, and the ship is in port, and I'll sit at someplace up on the top deck with my sketchbook, and I'll look to see what of this town that I'm in, the city that I'm in, what really attracts me, what is an artistic view. And I'll get my position all set up, and then I'll start sketching. But I'll also have my camera with me, and I'll take a photo from the exact same position I'm sitting. So I won't stand up to take the photo. If I'm sitting down and sketching, I take the photo from where I'm sitting. So then I have that as a reference when I get back home. But I do sketch when I'm traveling, and a lot of the works then that are in the show were things that I actually had sat and sketched. Some are things that, when I got home, I was looking through, and I take way too many photos. And I'll cull something and go, that would be a really great picture to use as a painting.
I do some sketching too when I'm traveling. I always take a sketchbook with me, but I do more of, just taking photographs, and then when I get back to my studio, I'll work from those.
Mm-hmm. Does the subject matter determine the media you're going to employ on a specific piece of canvas?
For me, it does.
Yeah, does
Like if I'm doing a floral, which there are a couple of florals in the show, that's where I could use the watercolor crystals. That's where I could use the poured watercolor, different way of using watercolor. So those are done differently. But if it's a landscape or a seascape type of thing, not too many seascapes, but the landscape, that's just, for me, it's just basic watercolor, ordinary watercolor.
Starting off as a graphic artist, and with a pen, my sort of standard approach is to do a watercolor and then scribble over it. But I've started painting again with the acrylics, and I think I'll move into oils before too long. I like that. And I like piling the paint on. I'm not as good at that as I am at my own little. I have sort of a voice for the watercolor scribble stuff that my friends will say, "Oh, I recognize that's your stuff," But
And they're beautiful. You should.
oh, well, thank you.
I'm telling Suzi she needs to put it into a book, one of the series.
But that's very kind of you. But Mary is she's moved into alcohol inks now, and oh my God, can blow you away. Some of this stuff is so beautiful. It's really, it's.
Can you describe alcohol inks and the process?
Alcohol inks is an ink that is isopropyl alcohol based, so rubbing alcohol, and they're little bottles, and there are hundreds of bottles of this ink, and because it's rubbing alcohol, it evaporates very quickly. So you have a little tiny palette, you put little tiny drops in, and you can, if you choose to use a brush to make something realistic, you have to work quickly because it dries very quickly. You have to add more water, add more paint, inks. Instead of washing your brush out in water, you wash it out in rubbing alcohol. Mm-hmm. So it's also not good for the environment. So
Smelly.
I have the windows open, I have the fans on. I do wear a respirator mask. I also have an air compressor to blow the inks around. They move very quickly when you're blowing them, but then they're dry. So it's an interesting process. I haven't done any inks for this show. It's more of an abstract.
They glow. They just they shine out. It's like, I don't know. It's like there's a light behind them or something.
I know. I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the people in your depictions, because they all caught my eye.
Mm-hmm.
They convey a strong sense of life going on within them, as well as around
them.
them.
Nice to hear.
Mm-hmm.
The Grandmere, Mary, the Gibraltar shopper, the women in Istanbul waiting for the bus, Suzi, the olive vendor, the gent walking through the cafe in Amalfi. All these people seem to have a sense of purpose about them that seems to come out of that, or a sense of fun, or a sense of reflection. How do you capture those inner and outer selves and get get that across.
Well, with the guy, the resident of Amalfi, I was just so amused when I went back. I was looking, that was of a cafe where we had stopped. I mean, have you been to Amalfi?
Long time ago.
Well, then you've been to this spot. It's sort of in this
In the center.
church. Yeah, the church steps are right there, and then there's a couple of cafes that are right there where everybody getting off the boats or the buses or whatever heads to those and has a glass of wine or a cup of cappuccino or something. And so I took some pictures of it, and I didn't notice until going back and seeing the photograph later that here we all are in jeans and t-shirts and and here's this guy in his Peterman coat and his furled umbrella and his hat, standing purposely striding across away from the tourist off to an important appointment, the resident of Amalfi, compared to all of us schlubs at the cafe tables. It just amused me. I thought it was fun.
And still in all, it's your creativity that allows us to see that in him.
Well, if you'll notice, just behind him, there's two American tourists in shorts that don't fit very well in an ATM machine, which I thought
It's funny.
yeah, I stuck the people in it.
You have to.
Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah, but tell them about your lady.
My Versailles grand-mère, what happened was my husband and I had gone through Versailles, and we're now at an outdoor cafe. And I always have my camera with me. At that time, it was a real camera, not my phone, which is pretty much what I'm using now. And I'm looking around and I'm taking pictures, and I realized this woman is sitting next to us with her daughter and grandchild. The kid's stroller is there. There's a lattice work behind her. The sun was hitting her just right, but I couldn't just go click because that would have been rude. I just didn't feel like I could do that. So instead I did one of these. I'm taking pictures all around. And I just sort of turned my camera sideways and I kept taking pictures and all around. And when I got home and I looked and I went, oh no, I got it. Because the reflection of her necklace matched the beads on the little bread basket, and the shape of the shadow in her hat was the same shape as the shadow on the roll basket. And she had a watch on, and the tab was sticking out. So my husband conjectured that she had been widowed, and this was her husband's watch, because it was too big for her. And she's got this glass of wine, and the light's hitting. I mean, it was just like, it was a 10. It was just a very fortunate 10. So I had to paint her.
And you captured her, too.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah, you captured her.
And the ladies in Istanbul, they were just sitting there, just waiting for the bus, and they were just giggling away. One was sort of sitting there, she must have been tired from work all day. But the others were just sitting there, just laughing. And I just loved that. It was so human. It was just so human. Yeah.
Do either of you have one piece of work that you value over the rest of them? Is there anyone, for example, you just said she was a 10. Is there anything that is beyond a 10 for you?
In this show or in all of our works?
All your work.
I have some that I won't sell. I have some that I really, really like, that I know worked, that came out fine. One is a floral, one is an alcohol ink. The floral is a watercolor. And so I hang those in my home. And if somebody were to coax me to sell them, I would put a very high price on them. And then, of course, I would sell it. But I do have a couple of real favorites. But other than that, not so much.
My favorites are the ones that, I mean, I like the ones that I think I did well, but doing it well and being a place that meant something to you. Like we had a family house on Long Beach Island for many years, and the old beach entrance before Sandy, and with the wildflowers and the old dune fencing, and there's a bicycle leaning up there in the spring, and that sort of, I have one of that I did years ago that brings back a lot of happy memories. So there's, the things that make you smile, you know.
You've both traveled extensively and lived elsewhere extensively. Here in New Jersey, now that you've had enough time to absorb lots of Jersey, does the area you inhabit feed into your perceptions and ultimately into your work?
Totally.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you go to any art show down here, you're gonna always see beach scenes, you're always gonna see marsh scenes, you're always gonna see those things. Well, I spent my adult life in North Jersey. I wasn't painting marshes or beaches or any of those things, but that's what's here. So if you're visiting it, if you're viewing it, if you're photographing it, that's gonna be your inspiration. So yeah, it depends upon, where you're living.
Well, there's a lot of, there are a lot of artists around here. Pine Shores Art Association has over 200 members. And we're around here because we're inspired. We love this area. It's beautiful. I've been, for me, we had a family beach house on LBI for 50 years. So this was, and in my married life, well, even before when I was single, moved around a lot. My husband was in performing arts, and that's kind of a musical chair industry. And we moved around a lot, but we came here every year. This was always this kind of became the roots and the home,
Mm-hmm.
We'd be in one place for 2 or 3 years, but we'd always be here. So
you've always painted beach scenes.
I've always, and when I was busy just strictly as a writer, or when I first started working, worked for stockbrokers for years when I was single. The only place I would paint really was here. I'd be here in the summertime, and I do a lot of plein air painting. I just take a easel down to the beach but yeah, this has always been, my inspiration, the seashore, and I really am truly taken with Southern Europe at the moment. But
I was just going to say, but the ability to travel, and it's a gift. That is just, for me, just such fodder. You just go and everything is so different, and I look for the differentness wherever I'm going, and so to just see these different things and explore them, and just think the antiquity of a lot of places in Europe, for instance, but to just see these different things and the tastes, the smells, the everything. This one of the paintings I did is a bunch of roses, because when we walked into this city in Serbia, we got off the boat and you were just hit in the face by the smell of roses. You don't smell roses like that in here anymore. Somehow they hybrid all that out. But the whole place just smelled of roses, and everybody's garden was filled, and these little ladies were sitting there selling buckets of these roses, which basically came to $1 a bunch. So we took those roses back to our stateroom and put them in, and we kept those for the rest of the trip.
like that, that one of the paintings in this show is of mine, is of that window boxes in Arles, and it's Arles, isn't it?
Oh.
As is silent. And I was just, we were sitting at an outdoor cafe, and I stood up. I hate being a rude American, pushy, tourist, but I was so taken with it, so I stood up to take the picture, and then when the server came over, I apologized for being rude and standing in the middle of the restaurant to take this picture, but I said because it's so beautiful, and she said, "Oh, it's so French," she said.
One more thing, when you go to an art exhibit, you look at other people's work, does that inspire you to broaden out even more? If it's something with which you're not totally versed yet?
Sometimes. I think it's more on the order for me of just appreciating talent.
I was just going to say appreciation is what I get out of it. I don't think I've ever gone to an exhibit and said, I want to try and copy that style.
Mhm.
or that color arrangement or whatever. Like this piece that was out here now is beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. But that wouldn't be my.
This
Style.
summer, I had that.
Okay.
I was with my family in Cape Cod for a week, and we were in a little gallery in Chatham. And the artist whose work was represented there did beautiful classic realistic watercolors. They were just gorgeous. But he had a lot of big giclée prints,
Mhm.
and with a big border around them. So it's a print of a painting. Then he took a detail of that painting and did a little pencil drawing or an ink drawing on the print of, just a little detail.
So like a thumbnail.
And then signed that,
Hmm.
which of course quadrupled the price of the print.
I've never.
And it also added to its beauty and interest
Do
and
that
everything.
next.
Well, I'm going to try some of those. Yeah, I thought, oh my gosh, well, I forgot all about this. What a great idea. So, yeah.
And also, not just at shows, but I search, especially with these new media that I use, I go on YouTube and I check out to see what artists are doing what things. And all these different people have different techniques. And I've tried, like just the other day, I tried this one new technique, and my husband was watching, and I said, no, that's not my style. That's not going to work for me. But the guy who did it was gorgeous. And just yesterday, I saw another technique that I can't wait to get home and try this afternoon, because I really like that. It was using the inks without the alcohol, without the rubbing alcohol, just blowing the ink, making it really intense.
Oh,
I
interesting.
can't imagine how it could be more intense than what I've already got going.
It's wonderful to know that you both have so much creativity left in you that we haven't even seen yet.
Oh, well, I think it just, like with everything, it should keep getting better and better.
And you're giving us so much more to look forward to.
Ah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Tom.
Mary Walker-Baptiste and Suzi Hoffman. You can see their exhibit, European Canvas, at the Ocean County Library Toms River Branch in the McConnell Gallery in November and December. Thank you for joining us for this edition of OCL Sound Waves. Keep up with the Ocean County Library's art exhibits and exhibitors and OCL programs and services on our 6 Spotify platforms, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and of course, at theoceancountylibrary.org. For the Ocean County Library, I'm Tom Longeli. Keep learning and keep growing.
Support public libraries. Like, share, and subscribe for more great videos.